Hey, well, welcome back to another episode of Aikman Bros podcast. I'm James.
I'm Andrew.
It's kind of our Christmas edition, both of us in green. Although if you go back and look at our other podcasts, we're probably in green most of the time.
Yeah.
But we do have Christmas coming up in a few days. So speaking of Christmas, we have our Pathway of Lights. We just wrapped that up last Saturday. I think we had around 2,500 people come. Had lots of repeat families from last year, which is
one of the main reasons why we wanted to do that initially, anyways, was to make it kind of a yearly tradition. And
somebody forgot to mute their radio.
This year, especially, I feel like I've heard the most amount of people saying that, "Hey, yeah, we were out here last year. Since you started it, it's been a majority of people that I've talked to throughout the different Saturdays. So I feel like that's definitely doing what we wanted it to do for sure in terms of making it a tradition. I was at the museum this past Saturday. So this past Saturday was definitely our busiest Saturday we had. Usually the Saturday before Christmas is, the most amount of people come out. So I think within the first hour, I think we had over 600 people come through the door. Finished just shy of 900 people for the night. So not bad for a 2.5 hour time block. But I was in the museum, had quite a bit of traffic in the museum, so that was nice in terms of people wanting to kind of stay a little extended, longer stay, seeing the lights and also kind of exploring the museum. And one family in particular said that they've been here every single year since the park was actually opened. And then when we started doing Pathway of Lights, they actually have come every single year. And they have 2 small kids, and she made a comment about, so when we first started coming, she was in a baby carriage, and now she's not. So that was nice to hear for sure.
Where they were from?
Cerro. Okay. So we do really appreciate the continued support. And like I said, this year we kind of every year with Pathway of Lights, we always like to at least add a few new things to it, kind of continue to fill out the main loop that goes around the red barn here at the park. So we've definitely grown it over the last few years.
Well, we did have Santa Claus out this past Saturday too. So.
Yeah, so that was like last year with COVID being, what it was last year. We weren't able to do anything like that, but this year we were able to find. We actually had Santa Claus,
Mrs. Claus,
and then an elf was actually with them too. So I think a lot of people. That was maybe one of the main reasons why we had so many people come out this last one. Other than the fact that it was the last Pathway night for the season, but I think they had their hands full for most of the night. I think they were originally scheduled to kind of wrap up around 7:30, and it was well after 8 o'clock before they were able to get the last kind of pictures taken and everything like that. So they definitely had a busy night for sure.
Busier than they thought. I think Emma said maybe sold over 200 cookies and 200 cups of hot chocolate.
Yeah,
in the watering hole. So
we've kind of potentially for next year, for 2022, we've been talking about. So usually with Pathway of Lights, we always end it the Saturday before Christmas is the last one. We've kind of talked throughout the last few years of if we kind of extend that maybe potentially into January, even going after Christmas and New Year's. And so that might be something that might be a kind of a new thing that we test out, get a few more Saturdays enjoyments with the lights before we kind of put them up. So might be something to kind of keep in mind for next year, that might have a few more opportunities to come out. I know we had a couple people message the Facebook page saying with kind of Christmas break, kids had just got out and they were wondering if this was going to be the last Saturday. And like I said, this year it was, but might be able to catch maybe a few more people. Works a little better with their schedule to do it at least the Saturday after. Kind of depends on where Christmas falls and New Year's falls, but we might be able to extend it a little longer, maybe moving forward than what we have in the past. So something to kind of keep in mind for next year.
Yeah. So this is actually something we're going to be discussing at the meeting today, is how do we want to handle Christmas. So we usually, all of us families want to have Christmas. Well, usually most of us have multiple Christmases we have to go to, and so we kind of, it's usually been you and I kind of on actual Christmas morning doing some stuff, and then Daniel and the boys come in sometimes, but we try to make it to where as few people need to come in as possible, kind of make sure all the animals get fed and watered and then
cleaned to a certain extent.
Call it a
I
day.
mean, what makes it nice is, and even in the very beginning with holidays, certain holidays coming up, we knew ahead of time that we could kind of do diets ahead of time, so we don't have to necessarily do that process that would be otherwise being done on a normal day. So that kind of streamlines a few things, making sure that everything kind of gets done the days leading up to a holiday, especially Christmas. But it also is one of those things that sometimes with holidays, if it doesn't work out like we're able to with the animals that get an AM feed and a PM feed, we're able to kind of combine it for that day to kind of streamline it a little bit. If it doesn't work out for me or him to kind of come back in the early evening hours to kind of do a few more kind of evening chores. But for the most part, that's one of the nice things of being able to be on site and kind of have family Christmases that are around the area, I guess, is worst case. You leave for an hour or so if you are at a family function, kind of come back to the park and do certain things, and then you're able to kind of go back. So over the years, we've definitely been able to kind of streamline the process to where it doesn't affect the animals at all, and it kind of makes our life as easy as possible. So
Kind of on the Pathway of Lights, we actually just met this past Saturday to discuss kind of what 22 looks like and if there's other events we could be adding, and so kind of talking through what some of those look like for the month, kind of looking at doing some things in the September, October, fall type of Halloween things. Talked about, I don't know if this happened after you left or
probably
hot dog eating contest.
Yeah, that definitely happened
in
after
July.
I left. Yeah.
So I threw it out there, but everyone else liked the idea. You can even set it up next to the hyenas so the hyenas can participate. See how you can beat the hyena.
Well, because we've always wanted, just kind of worked out that the Pathway Lights event was just kind of a no-brainer in terms of X amount of days for that sort of kind of holiday thing. And that was an easy one to really kind of get going off the ground. But we always, ideally in a perfect world, we go from event to event to event throughout the entire year just to kind of, take advantage of all the different sort of holidays that go on throughout the year and everything like that. And it's just in years past, it's just literally come down to logistics and taking the time to actually figure out what that is, what's involved with getting it set up, take down. And then obviously if you're doing anything that is like coming after an event and then you're going right into another event, there's the lead time going up in terms of planning for that event, while you are in the middle of another event going on. So again, it really has just come back to kind of logistics, why we've been a little more picky and choosy over what events we do. So like Easter is one that, we've always had our Easter egg hunts, the Saturday right before Easter Sunday. So that was a kind of real easy one that we've always been able to kind of make sure we allow enough time to prep for. And in years past, we've done from a Halloween standpoint, the Halloween weekend and then the weekend before, we've kind of had different candy stations, nothing too crazy or anything like that. Because the reality is at that point, we were actually putting up Christmas decorations for the Pathway Lights events. So there is some overlap that we kind of have to take into consideration. But I think, we talked about hopefully this year, if we have a decent February from a weather standpoint, we got kind of some Valentine's Day things for the month of February that hopefully might kind of get some people to come out during that month. And then
right. Well, and then just coming up first would be Jurassic January.
Yeah.
And so people can come out, and the museum will be included in your admission for that month.
Well, then we'll have, so like last year we did a thing called March Madness. So basically for the whole month of March, it's kind of donation only for all the adventures to kind of get access to the park. So that was really well received last year. So again, we've kind of over the years, we've been able to kind of incorporate certain sort of events or functions in certain months. And it was just now we kind of have the opportunity to kind of go back and really focus to try to fill in the gaps between the big events that we do already, to try to see if we can't kind of make an event calendar that would hopefully be kind of out in the open in the gift shop, to where people can kind of get a game plan on what the year here at the park's going to look like, and kind of plan for that to hopefully get people to come back multiple times throughout the year to kind of enjoy the different events that we got going on. So hopefully 2022 will kind of be the start of that, and then we can kind of just build off of that for the following years.
Yeah, so we've always talked about a calendar, but I think we're getting to the point where we're planning enough stuff to where we could actually have a calendar on the website that people will be able to check out to see what's always coming up and happening.
Yeah. So just kind of a little sneak peek at some of the potentially new events coming up starting next year.
Yep. So kind of our animal for this week is Brutus. Brutus is our, is he 8?
I believe so, yeah.
Our 8-year-old male elk. And I think it come from a place in Iowa.
I believe that's where we were told it came from.
So
he's a male elk, but we're almost positive he has some red stag.
Yeah, I think he's
100%.
I think he's probably 50-50. So his antlers have more spikes and kind of crowns to them. If you compare him to our female elk, he is more red, and even the elk around the tail, it's kind of white cream fur, but his is red around the fur. Yeah. But then his bugle, like first time I heard his bugle a few years ago, I kind of thought he was going through puberty, but then realized it's not that. So
it's not a typical.
For those of you who don't know, bugle. Elk bugle, red stags roar, and so he does something in between. And when he first started doing it, he sounded like the sick Triceratops off Jurassic Park, but he does sound more like a dinosaur now.
Yeah, when he does it, and I mean he doesn't do it very often, but definitely during the kind of the rut time of fall is when we hear him the most, and you can hear it across the park for sure. In terms of, it took a while to get used to it when he first started doing it, get mature enough to where he would actually call. Now it's a little more common during that time, to where if you hear a weird roar throughout the park, it's usually Brutus.
And if you've seen him, he's got massive antlers. He grew those in about 5 months. And what's hard for people to get their head around is he loses those every spring and grows brand new ones back. And so he's been getting bigger and bigger each year. But when the antlers grow, they have a soft velvet on them. And so he usually sheds that off in August sometime. And
that's usually beginning of August. So it's kind of between March and early April is usually when he sheds out of his antlers from the season before. And then from that point, usually all the way up into first part of August is his growing season, where he's in that velvet stage, and then he sheds off of that velvet.
So when he sheds the velvet, he becomes probably the most dangerous animal out in the drive-through, just with a head full of massive spikes, and he knows how to use them. So.
Yeah, so I think like this year, it's either 8 or 9 spikes on each antler. So, and he is an animal that he is aggressive. So during the velvet stage, he is no issue at all, because he doesn't want to take the chance of damaging that delicate velvet that's on his head. So he's out in the drive-thru during that time. No problem with that. But pretty much as soon as he sheds off that velvet, he kind of switches moods, becomes way more aggressive when it comes to tours, adventures coming up to like the wagon and stuff. So it got to the point where it was just, we had too many close calls with him being a little too aggressive with not only the animals that are out there, but also with myself and some of the other guys that work with the drive-through animals walking out in the drive-through. So we do have to move him out of the drive-through once he does kind of shed out of that velvet. So he is still in a paddocks that you can kind of see if you're doing the wagon adventure, you can kind of see him. If you're doing some of the walking trails on the walkthrough side, you usually get a pretty good look at him because his fence line follows right along some of those walking trails that are kind of lead you out to the pond. So he is definitely very impressive, but he is one that's very dangerous too, in terms of he is very aggressive through the fence sometimes with us. So we could be walking along the fence and he will charge the fence when we go in to feed him or check his water during the wintertime. Usually you have to have something with you. So kind of the nice thing about elk, along the same lines as large rat-type species, so the emu and the ostrich, if you have like a stick or something with you and you kind of wave it above your head, it kind of gives the illusion that you're a little bigger than what you are. So with Brutus, you got to take it a little step farther. You have to always be facing him. So if you have your shoulders turned away from him, he will more times than not try to take advantage of that and charge you. And like I said, with him and with how large his antlers are now, his reach is quite easy to hit you, even though his head would be 4 feet away from you in terms of his actual mouth and stuff, and his body would be 4 to 5 feet away from you. With just how massive his antlers have gotten, would not take much for him to kind of get in range of causing harm. So always something we gotta be mindful of, and that's why it's a little you always have kind of a little bit of a wide berth when you're walking along his fence lines too, because those antlers can go right through the fence openings if you're not paying attention. So if you're kind of talking to someone and you're hanging out around his fence area and you have your back turned to the fence, it's not a good combination. So it's
some of his bikes are 12 inches.
Oh yeah,
long.
So, and he will. I mean, when he charges the fence, he charges the fence. So he will stick his antlers all the way through the fence as much as he can and shake it around and make a big display. So definitely aggressive type of personality, and he knows that he has the weapons in terms of when he sheds out of that velvet. So he is not afraid at all to utilize what he has on top of his head. So, but he is we get a lot of compliments and a lot of people just in awe about how big he's gotten. So the first set of antlers that he would have shed when we first got him, they are actually hanging up in the gift shop. We have some of our wristbands that we sell on some of the different tines. And if you just compare, you wouldn't even think it was the same animal. If you see those and then go out and look to see what his current size is, you would think it's totally two different animals. But that's kind of the crazy thing about the deer species is, every year they will get a little bigger, a little longer, a little more massive thickness to them in the bases and stuff like that. And the crazy thing is the growing season doesn't change at all. So it's literally they just grow that much quicker every season that they're able to do that. So
yeah. And with Brutus, we've had elk here from the beginning. Our Aikman Wildlife Adventure logo was elk, kind of heavy, and so I think we've touched a little bit on the podcast that we're starting to have additions to the park in regards to bed and breakfast and weddings and receptions and different things. And so one of the things we've been working on is the rebranding aspect, coming up with a new logo that kind of put more emphasis on Aikman than just the wildlife side, but then adding the wildlife side to it, or we can add the overnight to it. And so it also is elk kind of driven. And so I think we're going to give you guys a sneak peek on what that looks like here up on the screen.
Yep. So that's kind of the new logo for the wildlife park. We'll kind of have this, and then like he touched based on some of the other things that we're going to be able to offer, it'll kind of have that same Aikman type of logo, and then obviously the subtext underneath there will kind of be more focused towards what that actual component is that we're kind of advertising. So kind of we wanted to go a little more of a simple type of route, but we'll hopefully maybe even start of next year, we'll start seeing this logo on shirts and hats and that sort of thing, and just kind of continue to grow from there.
Yeah. So with that, definitely want to thank you guys for tuning in. Wish you all a Merry Christmas, and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you'd like.
We would appreciate it.
So
later.
Cool story, bro.